My name is Russ Palmer, and some of you already seen me going around with a white cane. That's because I'm blind, I cannot see much at all, which makes life extremely interesting, since when I was born I had my vision quite normal, and I even drove a car at one time. Unfortunately, because I had a genetic condition called Usher syndrome and RP, which is retinal pigmentosa, it means tunnel vision, night blindness and deafness. And I was born severely deaf, which also makes life interesting as well, because if you cannot hear so well, you have to find ways of being able to communicate. Now you're probably wondering why I have somebody behind my back. She's not scratching my back, she's actually giving me information. Stina is actually my interpreter, and she's giving me information of what your body language is.
Be careful.
So there's no escape. And we also use social-haptic communication, so I can get the same equal information as yourselves. We'll be explaining a little bit about that later. But the purpose of this talk is to talk about musical haptices. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, what is this? And it all started through really Riitta and I coming together as a couple, and me being an active musician. And I'm also a qualified music therapist, which I qualified in '99 at Sibelius Academy here in Finland. At that time, I had 2 hearing aids, and my hearing wasn't particularly good, and I had to use a radio microphone. So it made it quite challenging, particularly when the lecturers were all in Finnish and I'm English. So I had to do everything the hard way. But my main area is how we feel music and vibrations. Because when I was in Norway, I had the opportunity to feel music floors, vibroacoustic floors, and then during my music therapy training, physioacoustic chairs and this sort of thing. And I became very curious about, well, how do hearing impaired people feel musical vibrations? And what about when you want to go to a concert or see an ensemble group play in a band? How do you portray this information, musical information, through touch? And this is where the musical haptices was developed. So,
Okay,
slides?
Yes, and the first one is your audiogram, 1987 and 1992.
Right. I thought it'd be useful for me to share some of my own personal information here, because for those of you thinking you're listening to me, I'm speaking quite well. Now, if I didn't have my implants on, I wouldn't be able to talk to you in the same way. I may be very monotonic. And in 1987, my hearing audiograph was at that particular level what we call bilateral ski slope, which means for a layman, middle, high frequencies are very difficult to follow, the STBP sounds. And in '92, that went down by 20 decibels a week before my final music exam, which wasn't very useful. It made things change overnight. The piano sounded different, my vocal singing sounded different, everything sounded different. And then later in 2004, I decided to have a cochlear implant. And that really changed my life. I found that music was still possible. I was still able to sing. And in fact, I did a CD before my implant and after the implant. And the comparison between one and the other is quite dramatic. For example, on one song I wrote, called You and I used to sing before the implant like this. You and I, walking happy together. And I found it difficult to find the pitch. Now, if I'm singing, you and I, walking happy together. So I had much more vibrato, I had much more control. And I was quite surprised, because when I called my producer, Jon Rossen, in Norway, I said, Jon, what are all these percussion sounds? Why don't you like it? I said, yes, I love it, but I just didn't hear them before. So the cochlear implant for me has been quite a revelation, quite a sort of musical journey for myself.
So do you have any equipment here?
Yes, I have what we call my 007 gadget. And it comes in useful sometimes, especially when you find your wife is nagging you.
I'm the wife.
Yes. And in fact, one of the new songs I've got, it's called Switch Me On, or Switch Me Off. You can interpret that whichever way you want to. But basically, it's something like this. Switch me on, babe, switch me on. I don't know why you always switch me on. Every time you're nagging away, I will have my little say, me and my remote will switch you off.
Okay, and the next one, please.
So Russ, this just explain about the auditive and sensory perception of musical experiences.
Yes, now for people with hearing impairment or dual sensory impairment, you may not be aware, but our musical perception of sound, the environment changes. Now, I had vision, as I said, from birth, and I was able to pick up a lot of visual clues. And I remember somebody telling me, I think my mother or somebody else saying to me that I used to watch the Beatles on Top of the Pops. And she's like, yeah. And I used to imitate the visual playing the guitar because I didn't have hearing aids until the age of 4.5. And that was because doctors didn't believe I was deaf. They just thought I was being lazy. And so you're relying more on the visual clues. And this changed over a period of time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm Riitta Lahtinen, and I'm working at the Finnish Deafblind Association, and I'm head of the communication unit. So I teach a lot of different communication methods. And one of my very interesting area is ISE, Intensive Special Education Research work here at the Helsinki University, and my supervisor Elina Gondry just sitting here in front of me. So on that research work, I'm researching touch, meaningful touch. And we have 3 main aims today, or main research area. That's how we use touch with different kind of client groups, hearing and sighted, dementia people, visually impaired, deafblind people, whoever. And the second one is how we actually describe 3-dimensional objects on the body. And one interesting area is that what is the pedagogical approach of social-haptic communication? So what I mean by social-haptic is that 1991 we met in Sweden in a conference. So conferences are very, very dangerous places. And then we moved to Finland 95. And I was asking Russ, what is your dream? And Russ said, I like to be a music therapist. In UK they say you can't be a music therapist because you are deaf and blind. And then I said, let's go to Finland. And we found it out that Sibelius Academy has this wonderful man, Petri Lehikoinen, who was doing music physio-acoustic chair. And he believed us for you. And we have other struggle. I was just starting my PhD work about hands-on signing. And I do remember when the first day at the Sibelius Academy they say, Russ, we need to test you if you can do the course. And there was a 2 psychologists that said, you can't do this. And Petri said, yes, you can. And they said that this first session, we evaluate you. So we were going there with other students in a dark room. And they studied us lip reading. Because that time was you were lip reading. So you couldn't do that. Then they put music on. And the lady said to me, you can't talk, translate, because you are disturbing with the verbal communication. And she started to do this guided imagery. Russ was there on the floor with other students. How do we give you the information? And the psychologist said, Russ, after 20 minutes I will ask you, what is the story? And it started, she said, it's warm summer day. And I was thinking, how on earth I will give you the experience of the warm summer day. And you were there, and I was just taking Russ very slowly on your forearm. Please do that for yourself, just very slowly with the pressure. And Russ said, oh, it's warm, it's hot, it's summer. Yes. And then the psychologist said, you are walking on the beach, on the seaside. And I was thinking, what do we do when we are going to the seaside? We take the socks off and we go to the sea and we feel the sea. And I started to do waves to your body, Russ. And you say sea. I said, exactly, that's correct.